Alright, so I just finished listening to the Carrion Throne, which is book one of the Vaults of Terra series. I actually have the physical novel here. It's got some pretty dope cover art. Try to get it without the glare here. Yeah, it looks pretty sweet. I'll try to link the artist who did the cover art down below. But I'm actually in the middle of reading the third book in the 𝒂𝒊𝒏𝒌𝒔 series, which I have here. And that's taking up all of my physical reading time, so that's why I'm listening to the 40k books at the moment. There's just not enough time to actually go through them and read them one by one. But I do have to say, Black Library does a really great job with their audiobooks. I've listened to many different audiobooks, and I often find them extremely boring and tedious, and I don't think it's the best medium to consume books in, but surprisingly, Black Library clearly puts a lot of effort into finding good narrators and doing a good job of really setting the atmosphere. Yeah, I had a great experience listening to this. No complaints as far as audiobooks go. Obviously, I would have rather read the physical copy, but it just didn't happen this time around. Maybe I'll get to that eventually. So this book is an Inquisition novel, and it just so happens that my entry into the 40k universe was through the Eisenhorn and Ravner novels. I think I read those probably in 2010 or 2011. I think that timeline works out correctly. But at the time, I had no knowledge of 40k. I didn't really know about the lore at all, and I found that through Eisenhorn and Ravner, I was able to really get immersed in the 40k world without having to understand all of the background history regarding it. The Inquisition books are basically just detective stories, which makes them very consumable for somebody who's not immersed in the 40k world, which I think is great. And so anyway, I really enjoyed that first round of Inquisition novels that I read, Eisenhorn, Ravner, and then I've also read Pentient, Pariah, like the two Bequin books that are out, as well as the Magos. All of those I think are fucking fantastic. Probably some of the best 40k books out there, if not the best. So going into the Carrion Throne, I had pretty high expectations, but I have to say, Chris Wright does a phenomenal job here in really setting the scene for 𝒂𝒊𝒏𝒌𝒔. Let's see if I can pronounce that correctly the rest of the video. I found that right away. I was intrigued by Cal, which I think is always important with an Inquisitor. They're supposed to be relatively mysterious folks. I will say I don't think he's quite the level of mystique as Eisenhorn, but I also haven't gotten through the rest of the series, so maybe that, we'll see. Maybe he grows on me over time. I think Eisenhorn's going to be hard to beat. Like I said, it's a very high bar, but I don't know. I had a ton of fun with this story. Even just the introductory chapter to the book does a great job of hooking you, I think. I don't know, like any good 40k book, you're immediately immersed in the action. After being introduced to 𝒂𝒊𝒏𝒌𝒔, Luce Spinoza, his interrogator, enters the scene, and she's a pretty great character as well. And they both have very different personalities, or they approach the Inquisition in very different ways. Cal seems to be a little bit off the book. He likes to maybe not follow the rules all the time, which is definitely rubbing on Spinoza's nerves, as you'll see throughout the first book. She's used to a much different style of Inquisition procedures, and so she's often questioning Cal throughout the book, which I think leads to it builds a great dichotomy between the two of them. And you'll see as they go farther along, like at first in the book, Spinoza's often in her inner dialogue, she's talking about how she's holding her tongue and she's biting back what she's saying. But as we get farther along, she starts to speak her mind, which leads to some interesting arguments about, what's ethical and what's not ethical to do when dealing with matters that affect such a massive amount of people on the most important planet in the Imperium. So let's quickly go over the plot of the book without giving away any major spoilers. When the book starts, Spinoza is landing on Terra, and she knows she's going to be paired off with another Inquisitor. She has left her past Inquisitor, and she's come back to Terra. She doesn't know who this Inquisitor is going to be, but it turns out to be Cal, and he takes her under his wing and brings her back to his fortress, where eventually it's revealed that there's these murders going on Terra that he's been investigating, and he doesn't know the source of them, but they're going to assume that it's some sort of chaos cult that's brewing in the Underhive, because the nature of the killings is that people are being butchered and murdered, and there's all sorts of just things that are leading to the feeling that there's some sort of chaos or Xenos threat on Terra, which is not good. This is also considering the fact that there's this massive Imperial holiday coming up called Sanguinala. In the time after Spinoza lands on Terra, Sanguinala is going to happen in a couple weeks. So they have this kind of short timeline to figure out what's going on, because during Sanguinala, every citizen on Terra is going to be out in the streets. So there's literally going to be billions of people celebrating, and the entire Planet Defense Force is going to have to spend a lot of effort in order to keep everybody safe and hopefully be, protecting the populace and the emperor from the populace. It would be a bad time for them to get caught off guard by some sort of chaos or Xenos threat that was brewing on Terra. Cal and Spinoza begin to investigate these murders, and along the way they find out that the threat isn't what they quite thought it was, and that there's people involved who they thought would maybe be the least likely people to be involved in the threat itself. The risk of the threat has much dire consequences than maybe just some civilians' lives in the Underhive or during Sanguinala. And I don't want to say more than that, but it adds a lot of weight to the situation as different details are slowly revealed over time. I think the ending of the book was great. I sat and just listened to the last hour and a half in one sitting because I didn't want to stop once I got into the final sections of the book. There's a really, for all the tension and buildup that's done over the 300 pages, I think the payoff was really good. And there's definitely a bit of a twist. It's not, I think you get hints throughout the book. It wasn't the most massive twist in the world. It wasn't something that was like completely eye-opening or jaw-dropping. But it was definitely a good payoff, and I was very happy about how it ended. I felt totally satisfied by it. And it leaves you on a bit of a cliffhanger going into book 2, which is great because I started book 2 right away, and I'm already enjoying that as well. Review to come. So besides Cal and Spinoza, there's a bunch of other really great characters. You have Revis, who is essentially Cal's muscle, or main muscle, rather. Cal has a few different muscle characters, I would say, but basically they're stormtroopers, right? They're Inquisition stormtroopers. And Revis is kind of a stoic character who has a fierce loyalty to Cal. He doesn't say much, but when he does, he means what he says, and is generally just has a very threatening vibe. But I'm interested to learn more about him. I read a little bit on the wiki, and it seems like he has a bit of a background. So looking forward to finding out more about him in book 2. Then there's Sergeant Hagain, who is a trooper who gives a bit of he's another stormtrooper who gives a bit of comedic relief throughout the book. He's often paired up with Spinoza, and I think, her very tight-lipped by the book attitude is she often gets a kick out of Hagain. I think I remember like the first time that her and Hagain run into each other, she notes that it's the first time that somebody's actually seemed nice or happy on Terra when she meets them. And anyway, he just has he has some of his humor is a little cringe, but I enjoyed it overall. He adds like a nice lighthearted vibe to the book. Then there's Navradoran. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he's a Custodes, and he comes into the book about a third of the way through, I believe. And the first time that he enters the book, it's actually when he's taking action against Revis and stops Revis as he's investigating part of the mystery of the cultist killings. So there's initially some tension with Navradoran, but eventually, once Cal has spent some time with him, he's able to turn him to their side and show that there's a reason why Cal is doing what he's doing. And yeah, there's some great scenes with Navradoran and the Custodes in this book. Really great payoff. It's nothing like Watchers of the Throne, but they're, you get to see them operate in a slightly different way, which I enjoyed. And I also think 𝑛avRadaran seems to be a character that we'll be seeing more of in the future, just based on his interactions in this book. I also another point that I just wanted to bring up is I didn't even really know that there was these different sections of the Inquisition. I guess I'm not the best lore master out there, but there's the Ordo Zenus, the Ordo Hereticus, and I believe there's the Ordo Malleus. Hold on, let's double check that. Okay, yes, I was correct. So there's the Ordo Zenus, Ordo Hereticus, and Ordo Malleus. Malleus confronts the forces of chaos. Ordo Zenus confronts alien threats. The Hereticus Ordo combats all sorts of human threats within the Imperium. So that would be the various cultists. And so I didn't really know much about these various ordos, and I still feel like I'm kind of gathering their different responsibilities, but it was nice to see the interplay between them because their goals are not always aligned, and you can see that there's some crossover and there's some tension going on throughout the book. So it just added another layer of politics to the book, which I felt was a great addition. I guess one last note is I thought the inclusion of the Mechanicus city called Skalax about midway through the book was a interesting little side tangent that Cal goes on at one point. I don't know, I found it fascinating that there's this whole other city of the Mechanicus, basically just like an embassy, but an embassy on steroids right in the Imperium. And clearly they don't operate under the same rules as the Imperium, so it leads to some problems for Cal, needless to say. But yeah, that was just an interesting addition. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that in the near future. So overall, I thought the book was great. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Just a really solid 40k book. I would definitely recommend it to anybody who loves the Inquisition novels or a good detective story. I'm already reading book 2, or listening to it rather, and I'm looking forward to doing a review on that soon. If you like the video, hit like down below, maybe drop me a subscription. I plan on doing more of these videos in the future. I have a bunch of reviews planned out, not just for 40k books, but other fantasy and science fiction books as well. Still getting used to doing this whole review process, so I appreciate you sticking with me as I iron it out. And yeah, I think these reviews are going to improve along the way, and I'm looking forward to getting the process down. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next review.